Reminders for quiz, assignment, project, and exam answers. I have noticed this one with your first activity or first quiz. That's why I have to be definite with what you should answer in Flare. How are you going to answer in Flare? Flare is not case sensitive, meaning to say, kung ang answer is puro capital, like I required you na kung account titles is the first letter should be in capital, but Flare would accept small letters, no, or capital letters. But when you answer this one using your columnar notebook, I will not accept that one. No? That would not be given credit or score. So the first letter for accounting subject class, the first letter of every account title should be in capital letter. And also be cautious for account titles that are with letter S. So I have examples here. Now, if the account title is accounts receivable, the proper writing of the account title is capital A for accounts, and it should be with S, and capital R for receivable. And the following examples are or will not be considered in Flare. Answers and amounts figures should have comma if answers are written in Flare. For the columnar notebook, no need for comma if you are using the assigned money columns. So I have examples here again, no? Na iban na magbutang ra ng amount, no need, even if it is an amount, no need to write the peso sign, or the peso sign would only be the letter P, capital P, and then 1,000. But of course, you are not going to write, especially if we're going to answer in Flare, do not write the peso sign anymore so that you will not be wrong. So just the amount, but make sure that the figure or the amount should be in comma, with comma. Like 1,000 is written not 1,000 without comma, no? Etc., etc. Answers in date should also be written properly with comma after the day and space, and dapat with space after the day, and do not abbreviate the month. Because of course, when I prepare answer key in Flare, dili ko siya naka-abbreviate, no? Dili siya pwede i-abbreviate. Example, for the activity that we have, for the first quiz that we have, the correct date is August 29 with space, and then the year 2018, and then 2, no? Because when I gave you the example, it is in this manner. I did not write dash or hyphen, no? So meaning to say, whatever example that I'm going to give you, dapat you should follow. 2018, then dapat with space, then the word 2, and then space, then the month November, and then space, the date, which is November 30, comma, space, and again the year, no? Not in any way here below, no? Or the wrong format also would be when you write August 8, August 29 would be written as this one. Again, that is wrong. So, or any answer that are not the same format above, which is the correct example. Note, please take note of the spaces, otherwise it will be wrong. Si Flair dili is more recognized than space, no? I mean, more recognized than space. Kung if my answer key is with space and then your answer is without space, it will also be wrong. So, I have manually checked. Actually, your quiz, at the first quiz, I have manually checked. But next time, no, I gave consideration, but next time, you always follow the format used in my examples. There will be no other answers. It would be difficult for me. Nagamit na gani ako sa quiz ng Flare na para mas dali mag-check. Tapos, you will be giving me another answers, no? That is not that of my example. Then, of course, Flare will will mark you wrong. This is applicable to assignments, quizzes, projects, and exams. Now, let's take up now typical account titles used. So these are based on the elements of the financial position or the statement of financial position, and also the financial performance or in the statement of income or statement of comprehensive income. These are the typical account title used. It is based on also the same confidential. We're going to start with the statement of financial position, or this we call before balance sheet account. So sa US actually class, it is called balance sheet. It is not even called statement of financial position. So assets. So remember that the elements of the statement of financial position are, so we may recall, asset, liabilities, and equity, if you may recall. So these are the elements. So based on the statement of financial position elements, we will also be discussing the account titles that are acceptable in the recording process of accounting. So let's start with assets. Assets are classified, no? There are sub-classification of assets. They are they are current assets and non-current assets. So ako akan ibutang din eh. So duha ka klase na assets, current assets and non-current assets. Okay. Ako i-change yung color class para okay, there. So current assets. Current means that it expects to realize the asset or intends to sell or consume it in its normal operating cycle. It holds the asset primarily for the purpose of trading or 12 months after the reporting period. When we say operating cycle, it's a time between the acquisition of assets, processing it to become a product, or it could be processing it to be part of the services that you're going to perform, and then selling it, and then it is converted into cash, or it may be first through receivables, then the receivables can be collected in cash and cash equivalents. And this will again be bought, the cash amount received in the sale of goods or services will be used again for the acquisition of assets. So normal operating cycle, if the business is selling Christmas decor, of course, it only be starting September to December. Of course, no one will buy after December, no? So only from September. So normal operating cycle for some businesses would depend, no, on what is the nature or the product that they are selling. So the first account under current assets are cash. So cash accounts are classified as cash. So the accounts that are classified as cash, we have the cash on hand. Cash on hand, John kwarta na John sa ato mga kamot. Not necessarily sa ato mga kamot. Pwede those cash that are in the safety deposit boxes or anywhere, no, that you keep it safe in a place within your house or in your office is cash, no? Then of course, it could be coins, no? We have here the new generation of 20 pesos na coin series. And then we also have currencies, atong mga bills, mga papel. Now, for all we know, we have all this. So, jato tag 20, 50, no, na the new bills. And of course, aton mga karaan na bills are no longer existent. It is already demonetized in currency or in circulation. And we have also under cash, no, checks. Checks, a written order to pay, to a bank to pay a stated amount or sum from the drawer's account. So I have an example of a check here. And I have also identified the parts of a check. So, ana ang itsura ng cheque? I know that some of you maybe have an experience of already handling or experience having a check, no? Especially for those kung magka-test ka mo, if you will be chosen as test scholar, no? You will have experience of having a check. So these are the parts of the check as identified, no? So just take note of that. That would always be part of your quiz or exam or a project or assignment. And we have also drafts, bank drafts. Now these are the term bank draft refers to a negotiable instrument that can be used as payment, just like a check. So unlike a check, a bank draft is guaranteed by the issuing bank. So ang check manggod, ang nagarantiya depende sa pondo sa nag-issue at sa depositor sa nag-issue ng cheque or the drawer, no? The depositor of a check is the drawer. Oh, you have to take note of that. And that when a bank, you are a holder of a bank draft, the one that guarantees the payment is the bank issuing the draft, no? It's not the depositor anymore because it is already purchased from the bank. It is automatic. It was already debited to the account, maybe debited to the account of the depositor and then requested to be issued with a bank draft, siguro for payment purposes that does not accept personal check, but only bank drafts or manager's check, no? Other terms or other types of checks that can be acceptable would be a manager's check. That is, again, guaranteed by the bank itself, the issuing bank. So that is a bank draft. A money order is a certificate usually issued by a government or a banking institution. But actually, class, the money order is usually issued by the Philippine Postal Corporation, no? Sa Pilipinas. That also, I have an experience in that because during my time, dili pa also ang mga online na padaya. So, ang ako parents will send me usually through the money order. So, postal money order. So, when it is just like a check that issued by the Philippine Postal Corporation. And then I will have this encashed or replaced dito na gihapon sa post office. No? So, that is a money order. And then, of course, this is not an example of a money order in the Philippines. It is in the United States. But of course, the point there that this is a money order is issued by a Philippine Postal Corporation. Next is cash. No, under cash, we have the cash on hand. Aside from the cash on hand is the cash in bank. These are accounts maintained with the bank. So, atun sa depositor, especially when you are issuing a check, of course, this is drawn against your account with the bank. So, your account or cash in bank account. So, you have the different types of cash in bank account. You have the savings account. That is an interest-bearing deposit account held at the bank. Lamang kay, kung if the purpose of you have excessive funds and you want to deposit it with the bank, although it is more safety, but it will not earn more, no? Compared if you're going to do or venture into business or the other types of deposits which has higher interest rate. So dire, kung savings, ang interest niya is only 1/2 of 1% per annum. Imagine, pilara kung imo 1,000, kung ato i-try, hala, kung if you have 1,000 pesos, moment class. For example, you deposited with a bank, may kuha-kuha, no, starting January, no, for purposes of discussion only. 1,000 pesos. Also, for purposes of discussion to class in accounting, we will always have no decimal place in our peso amounts or peso value that we're going to discuss, no? So I will always make sure that it is rounded off, or you should always make it sure that your answers are in ones, no? Via decimal place. So 1,000, so times, pila may interest rate. For example, the interest rate is 1/2 of 1%. Wala? 1/2 of 1%. Ano siya, no? And then, pila may result? Times, no, time. Because, sorry. Interest is equals to, I forgot. Interest is equals to principal times rate times rate times time. So please bear with me, class. Huh? Okay. For example, if the time, dapat a small letter, class. For example, if the time is 12 months, so just simply 12 over 12, di ba? 12 over 12, or just simply times 1. Sorry. Okay. So how much is our interest here? 1,000 times 1% times 1/2. 12 over 12 is actually times 1, no? Okay. So imagine kung imo ba siya ibutang sa time, or let's say sa bangko, a savings account, ang imo ra interest is equivalent to 5 pesos sa isa ka tuig, no? So buti pa sabot, it's not really that advisable if you have excess funds and then you deposit it to a savings account. But of course, rather than having a risky investment, of course, you may choose whatever type of investment or deposit account. Okay, that's it. No, that is how an interest may be computed, and if you engage or deposit in a savings account. So it's not really that lucrative, no? Unlike, or the interest is not really that big compared to other facility or savings deposit, or a time deposit is higher interest rate compared to a savings account. But there are also checking account class that are all already interest bearing, but the treatment of that in the part of the bank would also be a special savings account. But it uses also, it also uses or issues check, no, as mode of disbursements or withdrawal. So next account is the savings account. Oh no, it's the demand deposit or the checking account or the current account. This is the one that I've said that will issue check, no? Your deposit account that issues check. Otherwise, there is no, you will not be allowed to withdraw using the withdrawal slip because you need to issue a check for you to be able to withdraw funds from this type of account. This is a non-interest bearing account. You have to take note that this is a non-interest bearing account. But of course, there are, as I've said, there are already facilities that are interest bearing, or that there are already current account or checking account that are interest bearing. So time or term deposits, a term deposit is an interest bearing account that has a preset date of maturity. So naka-define kung kano sa dapat nimo pwede makuha, or that the time period that it will have interest, no? So a certificate of deposit or a CD, no? CD, and sometimes the facility of the bank is CD, is the best known example that the money must remain in account for a fixed term in order to earn the stated interest rate. So time deposits generally pay a slightly higher rate of interest than a regular savings account. The longer the time to maturity, the higher the interest payment will be. Another name for this type of investment is term deposits or term deposits above. Interest rate is higher than savings account. So regular time deposit. So this is, I just have shown to you an example of a certificate of deposit. Again, it depends on, this is not really applicable. The certificate of deposit does not, or is not the same all throughout banks, of course. So what I have just drawn from internet is just that of a China bank certificate of deposit. So petty cash fund, the petty cash fund is a small amount of cash kept on hand to pay for minor expenses. A moment, please. Because haba sa cellphone, ako na shut down. Again, a petty cash fund. A petty cash fund is a small amount of cash kept on hand to pay for minor expenses, such as office supplies or reimbursement. A petty cash fund will undergo periodic reconciliations. Actually, the best way would always be on a monthly basis, no? That this fund, or before reimbursement, it will now undergo reconciliations. And take note that the petty cash fund, from the word petty, it is really for small expenses. The best example for this is if, for example, the company adopts petty cash or the imprest system class, which issues check for all disbursements, for all payment of expenses with a minimum set amount to be paid, like for all expenses amounting to 1,000 pesos and above should now be issued with check. Now, if, for example, that is the policy of the company, of the business, and all those expenditures that are less than 1,000, that's 999 and below, should now be out of the petty cash fund, no? Like, pwede ba dyan, another example is, sa petty cash fund, unang gamitan. Kung for example, tagsugo ka ni kuan, ni ma'am or ni sir na mag-canvas. Kita, for example, mag-canvas ng mga amounts for items to be purchased. For example, it is a distant from the office. Ladyo-ladyo si dyan, no? Of course, dili ka pwede mag-backtask. So, of course, tagaan ka ng pliti. And of course, ay ang isyuhan ko ng cheque mo, dawat ba dyan ang driver ng cheque? Di ba, dili? So, it should be out of the petty cash fund of the company or the business. No? So that is an example how the petty cash fund is being used. Then change fund, no, for businesses that has, of course, that are selling for their cashiers, tellers. There is always a change fund, and the change fund will be used para panukli. And this will remain, no? Like there should also be set amount for the change fund to be remained in the tellers, because this might be also used or misused by the tellers themselves, especially if the checking of this petty cash or this change fund would only be on a weekly basis, then it might be used, no, misused by the teller. So the best way really is to set a minimum or the maximum amount to be left as change fund for every teller or cashier of any firm or any company. So change, pang sukli, no? From the word itself, change, it's really pang sukli. The next, revolving fund, is a fund or account that remains available to finance an organization's continuing operations without any fiscal year limitation, because the organization replenishes the fund by repaying money used from the account. Revolving funds have been used to support the government and nonprofit organization. In reality, class, does the revolving fund still applicable to businesses? Of course, dili siguro, no? If they're using checks, no? If they're using checks, because anytime they can issue checks and have this in cash with the bank, of course. If there are bigger amounts that are set aside for the purpose. So revolving fund would only be pwede ra siya as the need arises, or for example, when weekend comes, no, pwede ra revolving fund would be issued, no, para lamang dyan magamit during weekend, no, kung labi na ako magpalit ng gamit or that are expensive or costly during weekends, which doesn't have any office hours. So next is, aside from cash, no, and cash equivalents, actually, cash is cash equivalents. So you have our current assets is cash equivalents. So actually the account title, when you present this in the financial statements class, is cash and cash equivalents. Then cash equivalents are investment in stocks or bonds that has remaining 3 months or less to maturity date. So kung lisod ko sa subton class, buti pa sabot if joy ko may investment sa stocks and then bonds, pero kinahanlan and pre-requirement is 3 months or less an ija maturity date rakan nabilin for it to be classified as cash equivalent. So these are not really cash, no? These are only equivalents of cash, which are investments in stocks or in bonds. They take note, the qualification is kinahanglan has remaining 3 months or less to maturity date, no? Ang ija maturity. Otherwise, kung if it's more than maturity, it's only current asset under investments or current investments or marketable securities. Okay? Then marketable securities, investment in stocks or bonds maturing within 3 months to 1 year. This is the one that I've said. Kung more than 3 months or 3 months within more than 3 months to 1 year, no? Ang marketable securities. Again, these are investments in stocks or in bonds. Uman dyan mga investment in stocks or in bonds. Diyan gani mo palit ko ng investment that is more risky, no? Risky kay because it will be depending on the capacity of the issuer of the bonds or the stocks if they have the capacity to pay you in return, no, through interest or through dividend. So it's a risky compared to a time deposit, no, or a term deposit. Next is a notes receivable. It is a written pledge that the customer will pay the business a fixed amount of money on a certain date. But of course, there is a supporting document for these types of notes of receivable, that there is a promissory note issued by the buyer or the borrower. No, mag-issue ba gadun si Janan? Promissory note. If there is no promissory note for the receivable, then it is an accounts receivable. No, these are claims against customers arising from sale of services or goods on credit. This type of receivables offer less security than a promissory note or than in notes receivable. When we say receivable class, it's a transaction. There is a transaction of the business or the company that they were able to, instead that they were paid in cash, a promise to pay was issued. No, it may be a promissory note was issued. Then if there's a promissory note that was issued, then it is a notes receivable. But if there is no promissory note issued, it's just a, let's say, a promise or a trust, no, given to the customer to pay his account on a certain period of time that has also maturity, that has also a period when he's going to pay. No, then that is a accounts receivable, not a notes receivable. So, kibalik ko nakabaligyo ka mo, balik ko na ako. Kung nakabaligya ka mo, tapos tag-utang na ito customer, the account title that you're going to use instead of cash, kaya man ka mo bayarin ng cash, tag-utang man is accounts receivable. But if you are issued with a promissory note, then instead of accounts receivable, you are going to debit, of course, a notes receivable. You take note that there is S in notes, no, not at the end of receivable. And also the accounts receivable, the accounts has also S, not on the receivables. Next. So the counterpart for notes receivable. So on the point of view, the account is notes receivable. Point of view of a buyer or customer, the account is called notes payable. Of course, ija bayro no, no? Non-customer. Sa imo, ikaw nagbaligya, then it is notes receivable. But sa nagutang sa imo, it is notes payable. So just like here, sa accounts receivable also, in the point of view of the seller, it is accounts receivable, and the point of view of the buyer, it is accounts payable. Okay? So remember that the notes payable are part of liabilities. Utang, di ba? I said that liabilities are utang. So they are classified as liabilities. Basta the word payable, it means it is a liability. Kung we say receivable, meaning to say it is the watunon. So it is your asset. So take note that what we are discussing are part of the assets, and they are part of the current assets. When we say current assets, that they are receivable, or its usefulness or collectibility is within 1 year or less than 1 year. But when it is more than 1 year, then it is no longer current assets, but they are, or its usefulness is more than 1 year, then it is already non-current assets. Okay, next account is biological assets. This account refers to the cost of living animals and plants that are intended for sale. So mga tanom, no? Mga tanom, mga manok na ibaligya, no? Dili si ja mo nan himonan hinangkan, no? Dili si ja kibali pambaligya ra gajud, mag-breed ka then imo ibaligya, then they are biological assets. Kung magtanom ka, no, kung magtanom ka ng mga plants or mga vegetables, no, are biological assets. But what about for trees class that bear fruits? The biological assets there under current assets are the fruits itself, no? But the trees are non-current assets. They are biological assets na non-current because it is to produce. The purpose of those trees are to produce fruits, no? That are for sale. So aton mga fruits amoy biological assets na current. So tapos aton trees na mo bear ng fruit amoy non-current na biological assets. So inventories refers to cost or other appropriate value of merchandise and other goods on hand, in transit, on consignment with other entities, and in process which are intended for sale or production. So isa-isa ho na ako ini class, no? Inventories. Before, no, class, based on the definition of inventories, we have here that they may be the value of merchandise that are they may be the value of merchandise and other goods on hand daton imo baligya na waya pa mahalin, no? In transit na imo na tag-order, na imo na tagbayaran ato pa sa Manila, it's still coming, no, that is in transit. And then on consignment, those like mga candy gani class na ibilin na sa mga canteens o sa ibilin sa mga tindahan na kolektahon na nimo at the end of the day. That is consignment. But for the best example of consignment class, ano pa ini? CSM really. Most of the goods that are sold in the SM department store are on consignment. So see, Amuranan, they are paying the rental at the same time for SM. At the same time, SM earns a certain tubo out of the goods that are consignment. So that is cost saving. Mas dako siguro ang income, no? And with other entities, consignment with other entities. And when we say in process, those that are being produced na waya pa mahuman. Okay? Because when it is finished, it is already classified as other goods on hand, no? When we say in process, those goods, no, that you are into manufacturing that are processed, na at the end of the accounting period, waya pa sa mahuman. That's why waya pa sa finished product. That's why it is classified as goods in process. So we have here the different types of inventories. The merchandise inventory, this is the account title used for trading aton sa mga tindahan ng mga sari-sari store, for absolute essential, for Palma, no, remember aton trading or merchandising na nagpalitranan goods tapos in the same form of goods will be sold to the stores, no? So that is trading or merchandising. So ang ila inventory is called merchandise inventory account. And then for the manufacturing firms, the accounts used for inventory accounts are, you have raw materials, the work in process inventory or the work in process, or work in process, work in progress, no, hamok-hamok actually is a terminology and mga how it is being written. But for purposes of discussion in accounting 2, actually in BA2, the second part of accounting 2 or BA2, it is work in process, no? Without the hyphens within work and in process, I mean. So goods in process, of course, from the word itself, gikan sa raw materials, aton mga raw materials na imo i-produce, na imo i-proseso para mahimo ng produkto. So raw materials. So yeah, at the end of the period, aton raw materials, there were some na waya pa mahuman, na imo na tag-proseso, they are called work in process. And when these goods are already produced, no, nahuman na, then they are called finished goods inventory. Okay, so nahuman na siya paghimo, no? Like kung maghimo ko ng tira-tira, di ba remember? nag-process ka from raw materials at ano may imo mga ingredients imo tag-process o niabot na year end ya pa sa mahuman ya pa nimo mapak ya although nahuman na siya pero ya nimo mapak, then it is still goods in process or work in process. But when the goods in process are already available for sale, napak na nimo, naputos na cellophane na para for distribution, then that is already finished goods inventory. And also another type of inventory in manufacturing is manufacturing supplies inventory or the factory supplies inventory. These are the materials, no? The indirect materials that are used in the production process. What are those? These are aton mga putos, no? Mga putos, mga ano pa ini, label, mga cellophane or whatever form that are used to produce the product. But it's different when we say raw materials, because a product can be produced without a putos. You take note of that. A product like a tira-tira is still a tira-tira even if it is not yet packed. But those materials like used for packing are what we call manufacturing supplies inventory. Next is prepaid expenses. This account refers to payment made in advance to be amortized within 1 year. No? Because 1 year, because they are classified under current assets. No? So examples are prepaid rent, rental payment that is paid in advance. Remember, prepaid rent, kibali nag-advance, for example, you used, nag-renta ka ng imong boarding house, tagpa-advance ka, no? Ang advance is called prepaid rent. Okay? Because kung mulaong na-deposit, then it is not supposed to be classified under prepaid expenses. Under current assets, it should be classified as deposits, no? Deposits, rental deposits that can be classified as non-current assets. So, kay ano may difference between prepaid rent and the deposit rental? The prepaid rent will be classified as expense as they are consumed, no, or nagamit na ni one space. But the deposit would only be returned to you when you are going to no longer rent the space. No, iuli sa imo kung mahuman na kapag renta. Prepaid insurance. For accounting purposes, the account is always paid in advance for the entire year. No, 1 year gadyan ang for purposes of discussion. But then there may be problems that will specify kung what is the duration or the period applicable for that insurance policy. So 1 year, so dapat it should be divided. So the expense should be divided within 1 year. So the expense for this one, no? The expense on the part of later on, kibali asset pa siya, but later on there will be expense. So the expense for the rental would be rent expense. Okay? Sige, ato na lamang i-butang. Asset anay siya, pero kung ma-consume na, then it becomes okay. So when they are already consumed, then they are now classified or recorded as rent expense. No longer an asset, na prepaid rent. So for prepaid insurance also, when already consumed or expired, It is now insurance expense. Next, you have the unused supplies expense, unused office supplies, or simply office supplies class, or supplies as may be applicable in the problem. No, these are supplies used in the administrative function that are not yet used at the end of the period. Example: pencil, bond paper, fastener, computer ink, ball pen, envelope, folder. Those that I even mentioned to you in the module 1 or the previous meeting that we have. So these are unused supplies, or the account title actually used is office, arang kahamok class, no? It may be office supplies or simply supplies account will do. Okay, so these are the accounts, no, that maybe will be used in the accounting recording process. Okay, so once they are used, so they become assets. Once consumed or once used, sorry. Office supplies used for unused office supplies an asset account, as an asset account. So ang EJ expense office supplies used. And for the asset office supplies, an EJ expense is office supplies expense. And for supplies account as an asset, the expense account is supplies expense. Okay? Ana siya. So it depends on whatever is the account title that you use, no, as an asset account. Then prepaid interest, pareho ra gihapon diri sa taas. There are actually, when you borrow funds class, magkolekta na daan o i-deduct na daan ang interest for one month, or sometimes 3 months or 5 months, no, depende sa lending institution kung pila ka months ila i-collect in advance. So, of course, when they are already, for example, when the time lapse, for atong period na applicable sa interest, atong collected in advance, then the expense account okay. So the expense account for prepaid interest will be interest expense, no? So that is it, no? For current assets. Or actually class, when we say prepaid expenses, the other term for this one is prepayments. Okay, or prepayments. Okay, I will mark in color, no, those account titles that are being discussed here. Okay, para what is the best color? Green, so dili man siguro. Blue, pero dapat siguro i-bold. Diyan na kan. Then cash equivalents. marketable securities, notes receivable, ibasin maglibog, biological assets, inventories, so under inventories, tunduha lagi ka klase, no? After inventories, the prepayments or the prepaid expenses account. Okay, so that's it, no? Those accounts are under current assets. So now we're going to take up why they are in letter. Kanina waya. No? Bullet ra. Oh no. Because they are part of cash. Okay, sorry. So dapat naka-bullet bila sila. Sorry. Okay, so non-current assets. Ito yung bullet class. So you have property and equipment. Property, plant, and equipment. And then I forgot to include here na mga deposits o mga long-term investments. They are here. Okay. So actually the accounts, no? The major accounts under non-current assets, we only have property, plant, and equipment. And these are the items under property, plant, and equipment. I will go back with that in thorough discussion. And then we have the biological assets, atong non-current, remember? Atong the one that I've said, na atong trees, the fruit-bearing trees are classified, the tree is classified as biological assets na non-current, but the fruits itself are biological assets under current assets. And then you have that returnable deposit. Remember aton returnable deposit. Remember aton sa example na ako sa deposit sa renta, no? Sa age of pagpliti. That is an example for a returnable deposit. But another good example would be doon mga sa soft drinks class. Actually, when you buy soft drinks, no, for initial, for example, inventory in your store, kung may tindahan ka mo sari-sari store, what actually, and of course, initially, lahi ang cost nan mga botilya, lahi ang cost nan an ija content ng soft drinks, no? Lahi, kung manotice niyo kung sino may tindahan, lahi an isuyat ng distributor sa adton soft drinks na ija content sanan sa botilya. Lahi ang costing. Because these bottles can be returned and you will be paid, no? you will be the cost that you paid in initially for those bottles that you acquired for the start of your business will be returned also to you at the same time if you return the bottles to them. Okay, so that is returnable deposit. And then intangible assets, these are assets later on that we're going to discuss that inisidya arang gadyo kahamok. So dapat ba siya dapat naka A, B, C, D siya. Okay, sige. Good that I have noticed that one. Moment class. Okay, so let's go back to property, plant, and equipment under non-current assets. So take note that under assets, we have two classifications, sub-classifications, current assets and non-current assets. So we're done with the current assets discussion. So now we proceed with the non-current assets. So property first is under non-current assets is property, plant, and equipment. These are tangible assets that are held by an enterprise for use in the production or supply of goods or services, or for rental to others, or for administrative purposes, and which are expected to be used during more than 1 year period. Or 1 period, no? But it was about more pwede 2 periods, 3 periods. So dili ra kon isa ka period si ija usefulness. Or meaning to say more than 1 year, no? So the example of which are land, lupa. So lupa si ja. So you have the land. So lupa, no? Ang lupa nimo na wayay building or maybe joy building pero the valuation is different from the building. No? Remember that one. That this is the only account, no? Take note, class, that this is the only account that is not subject to depreciation. When we say depreciation, class, that is the decrease in value of the asset. The one that I mentioned to you last meeting, that the assets would have a decrease in value. That the decrease in value is what we call now depreciation. The cost assigned to the decrease in value is depreciation, or the account title is the depreciation expense that we're going to take up no, after the discussion on the land. So again, lupa, pwede dyan ay suyod, pwede dyan ay building, pwede sa waya, no? Or mga lote, no? Para masabtan mga lote. Land improvements. Sorry, it should be in red ba dyan? Okay, land improvements. These are enhancements to a plot of land to make the land more usable. If these improvements have a useful life, they should be depreciated. Kung an ija, ano pa ini, if for example, the land has improvements that you're going to erect on, mga shanty or the building, then that is to be depreciated. If there is no way to estimate a useful life, then do not depreciate the cost of the improvements. If the land is being prepared for its intended purpose, then include this cost in the cost of the land asset. They are not depreciated. Examples of such costs are pag-demolish, no, an existing building. So remember ko na, for example, nagpalit ka ng lupa and then the lupa na kantidad nimo pagpalit is kita 1 million pesos. Pero dyan yung building, daan, no, karaan na building, or bisan anything, no, that it cost you to hire people or to hire a construction firm to demolish the building. No, no, kay siguro dako-dako ang building, tapos dili ka gusto kay dilapidated na or karaan na, then pag-demolish should be part of the cost of the land, no? Like 1 million, pero ang pag-demolish, nagasto ka ng, let's say, 300,000, then the cost of the land in your book should be recorded at 1,300,000 pesos. Ana siya. So the cost of demolishing should be part, or the cost of filling is also part, no? Clearing or leveling the land. O mo clearing, palimpyo na mga sagbot and then naggasto ka, no, para lamang makuha ang sagbot, or nagfilling ka, no? Nagfilling ka para ma-level ang land. Kaya base mo dyan shanty or tubigon, pag fill ni mo class, and costing mo sa filling or leveling or clearing should really be part of the cost of the land. So sa imo libro, dili ra ko natong kantidad na 1 million pesos ang imo ikantidad na value sa imo land, but also includes the demolishing and the clearing or the leveling of the land, no? Leasehold improvements. Leasehold improvements, these are any changes made to a rental property in order to customize it for the particular need of a tenant. Okay. Subuti pasabot, kung magrenta ka ng space or ng building, and then you want this to be improved, kaya gusto ni mo gwapa, di ba? Or diyan mo design na gusto para sa imo tindahan, or nag-franchise ka, tapos there is a design gadget store facade, how does the store would look like, facilities would be in place, no? So dapat based ko sa franchise agreement, all these things should be present. Then you should also tailor fit the building that you rented, that you leased, to adhere to whatever is the agreement of the franchise or the one that you want, na gusto nimo na design sa imo building. So these are, of course, the building cost is not yours, so dili nimo i-appeal sa imo financial statements. But what is to be included will only be leasehold improvements aton pagpa-renovate. When we say leasehold improvements, the renovations that you made or the alterations that you made to make the building suitable or customized to what you need, no? So these are charged to leasehold improvements. And then building, of course, kung diyan mo building, then they are charged, no? They are subject to depreciation. Kung nag-construct ka ng building, then, no, it is supposed to be subject to depreciation. So all items, the leasehold improvements, the land improvements may be, depending on what you have erected on the land, the leasehold improvements, the building, the machinery and equipment, the furniture and fixtures, the motor vehicles and equipment, the tools are subject to depreciation, no? So isa-isahon na nato before we deal with what is the depreciation. What is depreciation about? First, building. I mean, everybody knows what does a building looks like, no? Then the machinery and equipment, o naman ini siya, pwede ra actually machinery class, pwede sub-equipment, no, for purposes of discussion and accounting one, or even if you're a sole proprietor, you can actually use an account title that is tailored fit to your business. But for accountants, when they audit it, they are going to use a classified or the universal classification of these accounts. So, mixer, na under machinery and equipment, mga mixer, construction equipment, crane, etc., etc. Furnitures and fixtures, mga table, chairs, filing cabinet, divider, and showcase are examples of furniture and fixtures. Take note, YAS and furniture, only the fixtures are with S. Motor vehicles and equipment, you have the delivery car, shuttle buses, motorcycle, anything that is mobile, no? And then office equipment, the account includes computer equipment, the air conditioner, the shredder. Would you know what is a shredder? Diyon gani panggisi ng mga confidential na papel para dili na siya makita ng iban. When you dispose the document, imo ana siya shred, deserve pa nimo ilabay sa basurahan, or the best way if you don't have a shredder is really to burn, no, these documents that are no longer used. Then photocopier, calculator, electric fan, the proximal machine, the telephone sets, no, are part of your office equipment. If you have televisions in your office, are also office equipment. Tools, these are the small, no, tools, aton mga gagmay ra that can easily be mabutang sa bulsa, no, and they are supposed to be dapat charged to tools if its usefulness would be prolonged for a period of years or more than one period. It is used for more than one period, then they are classified as tools. But if they are disposable, then they are classified as expense. Diretso. Accumulated depreciation. It is a contra asset account to the depreciable assets, daton mga listed improvements sa building, machinery and equipment, furniture and fixtures, etc., etc. So I've said that they are subject to depreciation, meaning to say there is an account for these accounts called accumulated depreciation. Accumulated depreciation is a contra asset account that contains the sum of the periodic depreciation charges. The balance in this account is deducted from the cost of the related asset, equipment, buildings to obtain the net book value or just the book value. Okay, so let's have an example to be able to understand what is really accumulated depreciation or the depreciation expense account. Remember that the depreciation expense is an expense account charged to an asset account for its tear and wear, no? Kibalik, in the passage of time, madaot man or dili na magwapa, or there may be changes in the physical appearance of the asset, no? Then the depreciation expense is the account that reduces its value. So I have here an example. Mr. A acquired a computer equipment on July 1, 2015, amounting to 30,000, and the estimated useful life of the asset is 3 years, and it is depreciated using the straight line method. Naton kadumdum aton consistency, no, naton lang ko na depreciation method, the one example of the depreciation method that is commonly used all throughout businesses is the straight line method, because this is the simplest method of depreciation. So, nagpalit ka ng equipment, si Mr. A ko na nagpalit ng equipment on July 1, 2015. Ang kantidad sa equipo o computer equipment is 30,000. Tapos nag-estimate ng certified public accountant na ang life ng aton computer equipment 3 years ra, and then ija gamiton ng straight line method for the depreciation method purposes. Okay. So you have there depreciation expense is equals to the cost of the asset divided by the estimated useful life. So let's substitute. The cost of the asset is 30,000. Then the estimated life is 3 years. So 30,000 divided by 3 years, then you have an annual depreciation of 10,000 per year. For year 1 class, kibali, di ba remember, tagpalit siya on July 1, 2015. Oman 5,000 raman kon 10,000 per year because nagpalit ka na naton computer equipment ang July pa. So that is July to December kung calendar year matagamit, then it would only be 6 months. So 1/2 of 10,000 is 5,000. For second year, that is 2016. Sige, ato i-change na year para mas masabtan. Sumusamot ini kagamay class. Sige ra kadali. Okay. Para masabotan, ako tag-rephrase, no? Kay para, because remember the computer equipment was acquired on July 1, 2015. So 6 months from July 15 to December 31. And then year 2, of course, the entire year sa 2016. So gikan January to December. Year 3, again, January to December. And year 4, sa 2018, which is the third year of the life of the asset. No? Kay remember July 1, July. So dapat sa quote of January kan sa year 4, gikan January ra kan to June, no? Which is 6 months. That's why it's also full na 5,000. I'm half of the 10,000 pesos the annual depreciation. So that is, no, the depreciation expense for every period that you are going to recognize in the book of the book of accounts. Depreciation expense for 1 year is 10,000 times 6 over 12. So the period covered is from July 1 to December 31, 2015. So 6 months only. How the accounts are presented in the statement of financial position or the balance sheet and in the statement of income or income statements. So you have there, sa computer equipment, dapat ini nag-insert ako sa okay, para ma-identify okay, for the statement of financial position, amo ini itsura, no? Sa asset, other non-current assets, you have the computer equipment sa year 1, 30,000 ija cost. Historical cost, kadumdum ka mo, na bisan kanus apa si ja, kung small time business sa gamiton ka dyan historical cost, dili kon market value accounting. So year 2, historical cost is still 30,000. Year 3, it's still 30,000. Year 4, it's still 30,000. Remember of the historical cost as principal in accounting. Then, you have less accumulated depreciation. Remember, the definition of accumulated depreciation, we have to go back. It is a contra asset account that contains the sum of the periodic depreciation charges. Buti pa sabot, ang kada tuig na depreciation, amo dyan ibutang sa accumulated depreciation. But of course, kung year 1, di ba kanina, we have identified na sa year 1, 5,000 pa. So the accumulated the depreciation expense is still 5,000. So the accumulated depreciation is still 5,000 for the account. For year 2, the depreciation expense is already 10,000. So since accumulated depreciation is the sum of accumulated depreciation expense, so the first year na 5,000 dire plus the second year na 10,000, so it is 15,000. So for the year 2, no, for year 2, so the net book value, of course, less NIMO. For year 1, 25,000. For year 2, 15,000. For year 3, 25 na because sa year 3 nato na depreciation expense based there is a table above is still 10,000. So the sum gikan 5,000 plus 10,000 plus 10,000. That is 25,000. So the net book value for the end at the end of year 3 is now 10,000. But the expense is still 10,000 based on the table above. Then year 4, the computer equipment is still 30,000 historical cost. The accumulated depreciation is now the sum. Gikan 5,000 plus 10,000 plus 10,000 plus 5,000 is 30,000. So the net book value is now 0. But the depreciation expense based on the statement of income is now 5,000 for year 4. No? So that is how we present the depreciation expense and the asset account, the computer equipment, and accumulated depreciation in the statement of financial position. A moment, class. Note that the estimated useful life is the estimated lifespan of a depreciable asset during which it can be expected to contribute the company operations. This is an important concept in accounting since a fixed asset is depreciated over its useful life. Cost of asset, this is defined as the original price of the asset or the historical cost of the asset, which can determine its depreciated value over the course of its useful life. For example, of the cost of the machines, purchase price cost, transportation expenses, and installation costs. Although we have already discussed this one, what are the costs that includes in the asset acquisition? And of course, remember that the price, of course, the price of the item, plus the transportation expenses or the delivery costs, and whatever it requires installation, then the installation charges should also be part of the cost of the asset. So another, aside from property, plant, and equipment, from out of the non-current assets, biological assets, I have already discussed it kanina earlier na this represents itong trees, the fruit-bearing trees are classified as non-current assets, while the fruits, whatever you harvested from that fruit-bearing tree will be biological assets, not current assets, classified as current assets. So I also have explained to you already the deposit on returnable container. And the intangible assets, we have these are identifiable non-monetary assets without physical substance for use in the production or supply of goods or services, for rental to others, or for administrative purposes. Example of intangible assets, goodwill, patents. This is a government license that gives the holder exclusive rights to process, design for a new invention for a designated period of time. So then when we say copyrights, the legal right granted to an author, composer, playwright, publisher, or distributor to exclusive publication, production, sale, or distribution of a literary, musical, dramatic, or artistic work. Licenses, these are like mga certified public accountants or for civil engineering that they are used, just to be able that the contractors business will be approved by the Philippine Contractors Association Board. For them to be able to approve, dapat there should be a civil engineer to be hired. And of course, the license of that civil engineer, even though the one that is working is not really that civil engineer, but his license is being used for the approval of the permit. Franchises, for all we know, this is the most applicable for everybody, that you can just buy a franchise, or acquire a franchise rather than try a business that may not work in the long run. So you will always, in a franchise, you will just buy the right to use the name, the products, and the services, and all items, or the furnitures and fixtures, the design, and the logos may be used under the franchise agreement. Trademark. So I think neighbor naman kamo na example ng mga trademark. It's a recognizable sign, design, or expression in which identifies product or services of a particular source from those of others. A trademark may be located in a package, a label, a voucher, etc., etc. Brand names, Sharon. So the example for the brand names, it is like Bear Brand, Alaska, and for secret processes like whatever, like Jollibee, Chicken Joy, of course, how it was prepared or whatever they are mixing, of course, is a secret process. And of course, this requires approval from the one who invented this one for its use. Of course, kung naton gani kas, I had a really experience in Bukidnon that there was one stall dyan gani mobile ra na store ng Chicken Joy ng chicken na amo ra gud sa Jollibee na taste, no? Actually bisan oil ng Jollibee ila tagamit, pero I don't believe it was really the mixture. Dili man gud ko na ang oil ang may makapalami, but it is really the mixture to mga ingredients, no, to marinate the chicken. So I think they were actually sued, no, by Jollibee Bukidnon, and that's why their business is stopped and they changed into another business or product. Subscription list. So aton mga mobile numbers nato actually are subscription numbers, no? That, di ba, remember we will be able to receive text from government agencies, and these numbers are actually given to the government for them to be able to reach out to the users of these SIM cards, no? So that is an example of a subscription list. Non-competition agreement. So it requires a non-competition clause. No, for you to be able to not to be competed with the same line of business, the same type of product. Actually, class, the best example for non-competition agreement is the distributorship, or like even if a franchise class, that if you buy the entire franchise within the area, no, that is another thing for non-competition agreement. For you not to be, let's say for example, Jollibee, you bought a franchise for Jollibee within an area, and then later on, sa franchise ng Jollibee, dili ko ikaw nagpalit, ano? If you want an exclusivity of the franchise of Jollibee, then you buy. That is also one non-competition agreement. Or you agree with some businesses for exclusive distributors na dapat in one area ikaw gajud ang mag-distribute, dili pwede sudlan ng lain na distributor. That is an example of a non-competition agreement. Now we proceed. A moment, class. Now we proceed with liabilities. Liabilities, again, there are two subclassifications under liabilities: the current liabilities and the non-current liabilities. So pareho ra sa assets. The assets has also two subclassifications. You have the current and the non-current assets. So pareho ra sa liabilities, the same, no? Under liabilities, kadali class ako ini change into, sorry. Hello. A moment, class, I have to arrange first this discussion. Okay. So you have other liabilities. The first item is accounts payable. So it represents a reverse relationship of the accounts receivable that I have also shown to you kanina. By accepting the goods or services and the buyer agrees to pay for them in the future. So point of view of the buyer, accounts payable. Point of view of the seller, receivable. So notes payable, remember that this is the reverse sense of notes receivable under current assets that I have also identified that at the point of view of the buyer, it is notes payable. But in the point of view of the seller, it is notes receivable. Remember that before an account to be classified as notes payable, the buyer issued a promissory note to the seller for the items acquired, no, or bought. Accrued liabilities, this is actually an account that embraces all liabilities, that there may be like mga interest payable, no, are accrued liabilities, or utilities payable are also part of accrued liabilities. These are amounts owed to others for unpaid expenses. This account includes itong mga salaries payable. Actually, pwede ra sub different account and salaries payable. Pwede ra sub different and utilities payable, interest payable, and taxes payable. But they can also be classified into one as accrued liabilities. But for income taxes payable, it is really a requirement of the Bureau of Internal Revenue that income taxes payable should be shown separately and not to be classified under accrued liabilities. So dapat separate is a presentation from the other accrued liabilities. SSS premium payable refers to the amount due and payable by the enterprise to the SSS or the Social Security System. What is due here is for the employer and the employee share, no, are also part. Okay, so this is a SSS contribution table 2015, but actually it has already been replaced for starting January 1, 2021. So it has new rates, no, applicable, but you can just browse this one from the internet. What is the latest SSS contribution table? And then so I have an example here how to use the table. Kaya class ako ini si D. So this is how to use the table above. The salary, for example, if the salary of the employee is 12,800, you simply just locate 12,800. It is between 12,750 to 12,750 and 13,249.99. So, on. The corresponding deduction of the employee amounts to 472. So, ato ratan awon dire sa ija row 472.30 the total, no? And then, and for the employer share, it would be 957. Where are you? Okay, then for the employee share would be 472 pesos and 30 centavos. So that is how, no, you are going to, how you're going to look into the SSS contribution table. For field health, I think it's 5%, but the minimum of which is 100 pesos. I don't know kung 5% or 1%. I don't know. Hindi ako familiar. Pag-ibig, so as defined again, they have their separate table, how much would be payable. Income taxes, remember that we are discussing about liabilities. Taxes payable, this is the one that I've said that under accrued liabilities, although part and income taxes payable, dapat it should be shown separately. Then we have unearned revenues. So revenues, no. They are actually income or payment for possible services, no, that may be that are paid in advance. So, di ba, I said they are not classified, those advance payment for services or advance payment for goods to be delivered in the future on some other time, then they are classified as, they are not classified as revenue, but the appropriate account title for them would be unearned revenues. So current portion of the long-term debt. So kung mangutang, so the installment, no? For example, installment of 1 million pesos every year, then the current portion would be the 1 million, the one that is due within 1 year. Okay, next. So for example, itong 1 million pesos na ako na example, na payable on the 200 pesos kabali excluding interest. So how is it, how it is being shown in the statement of financial position? Class, So under mortgage payable, under non-current liabilities, so from, di ba, 1 million minus 200 na current, so plus those paid within the year. So that's why it's the mortgage payable na non-current liabilities is 600,000. Then and so on and so on. Then under non-current liabilities, we have we have two accounts, no? We have the mortgage payable and the bonds payable. So for long term, aton mortgage na 1 million is mortgage payable na non-current, but the mortgage payable na short-term period, aton annual installment would be classified as the current portion of a long-term debt. So mortgage payable, when you borrow funds and then you offered your real properties not to be collateral for the loan, then that is mortgage payable. When you say bonds payable, this is you issued bonds, no, and then you are going to repay it in some period of time. That instead of borrowing funds, instead of mangutang ka ng cash from the banks or from maybe clients, or interested investor or creditor, you instead the company issued a bond, no? That of course it is a liability to be repaid, no, by the issuer of the bond. So remember, it's a liability, that the bond in nature is really a liability. So next, another element of the statement of financial position is the owner's equity. So you have there the owner's equity, you have the capital. So from the Latin capitalis, meaning property, this account is used to record the original and additional investment of the owner of the business entity. It is increased by the amount of profit earned during the year or is decreased by a loss. Cash or other assets that the owner may withdraw from the business or personal use will be ultimately reduced the account. The account bears the name of the owner. Like example, kung ako ang tag-ija, then it should have the account title. The proper account title is Tuzo Capital. And a withdrawal, these are withdrawal of funds by the owner of the business. The withdrawal is not used to be, it's not to be used for the business. That's why it is called withdrawal. So when the owner of a business entity withdraws cash or other assets for personal use, then they are called withdrawals. So that it will reduce the capital account of the owner. Income summary. This is a temporary account used at the end of the accounting period to close income and expense account. Actually, the elements of the income and statement of financial, statement of accounts, or statement of income will follow next, no? So since it has already been discussed, as I've said, remember that when we are going to analyze the expanded analysis of the owner's equity, so it includes these accounts. So when we say income summary, the income summary can be debited, may have a debit balance, or may have a credit balance depending on the situation. If income is greater than expense, like in this example, sa left side, the income summary has a credit balance, because remember that income or the revenue has a credit balance and expense has, the picture was that. And expense has a normal balance of debit. So credit minus debit, kung mas dako ang debit, so dapat debit balance. Kung mas dako ang credit, so credit balance. So that's why in this case, kay mas dako man ang income, which is a credit balance, so the net income here or the income summary has a credit balance. But on the right side, the income there is less than expense. So remember that your income has a credit balance and expense has a debit balance. So mas dako ang debit. That's why the difference between income and expense is what we call net loss if expense is greater than income. So the income summary here has a debit balance and not like on the left side, which has credit balance. Statement of income. So now let's take up statement of income and or this income statement accounts. So remember the elements are simply the income and expense accounts. Dali class ha, kay mas magsubay sa ija. Sakto na bulleting. For a while class. Okay. So the statement of income or the financial performance elements, you have the income and expenses. So under income, you have two types. Actually, there are many income accounts. Now, later on in real life, you would learn that there are so many. Other income may be used, no? Even if you are not, even, no, other income may be used as an income account if the income is not your main course of business. So you have the service income. So this is the income when you perform services. So I have shown here examples, no? And then sales, this is the revenue earned as a result of the sale of merchandise or manufacturing or a construction firm, no? Kung magbaligya ka mo is what we call sales. Kung jay produkto na ijo ibaligya, then that is sales. Pero kung serbisyo an imo ibaligya, imo tag-offer, it is service income or other income, no? That may be used in the problem in accounting or BA1. Expenses, you have the cost of sales, the cost incurred to purchase or to produce the products sold to customers during the period, also called cost of goods sold. So this is the largest actually account, no? That is part of sales or deduction to sales to determine how much is your profit. So kung sales, kung dyan sales, and then one of the expense account of sales is cost of sales. But if you're only into service income, of course, there will be no cost of sales. But there may be cost of service, no? Pwede cost of sales, pwede sa, merchandising ka or trading, then you should have cost of sales. But if you are rendering service, but your product is service, then you may have a cost of service. Salaries or wages expense, as well as sa mga tao, which is inclusive of 13th month, and any cost of living allowances and any other related benefits, no, for an employee. Communication, light, and water. Actually, in real life, lang ako, pwede ka mo magamit ng communication expense sa separate account. You can use also light expense for your electric consumption, light expense as a separate account, and also water expense as a separate account. But for certified public accountants, these accounts are combined. So communication, light, and water is only one account. But again, as I've said, if you have a sole proprietorship business, for you to be able, how much are you paying for light consumption, for your electric consumption and water consumption, and your communication, then you create separate accounts for this one. So fuel and oil, communication class at mga postage and stamp. Actually, pwede na sabaan postage and stamp to be classified as expense. Supplies expense, no? Even if, especially if what the stamp is really a stamp, a physical stamp, dili con metered stamp, no? Then fuel and oil, of course, gasolina. You cannot, gasolina, mga oil, mga lubricants, engine oil, no? Kung dyan sakyanan ang negosyo. But then you cannot use fuel and oil as an expense kung way imo sakyanan na tagamit sa imo negosyo. You have to take note of that. That not all accounts are applicable to one business. It depends on what are the assets that are being used by the business. Rent expense, ato nag-plate ikaw kanina, ang advance rental is prepaid rent. When you have consumed the space or tagamit na nimo ang space, then the time that lapse would now be, the proper recording is to record the prepaid rent to rent expense. Supplies, again, aton mga office supplies and used supplies. Then the supplies account, the expense account is simply supplies expense or office supplies expense or used supplies used expense, no? Bisan dili na mag-expense because supplies used is already enough, because when you say used, it means expense. Insurance, again, sa prepaid, remember, the rent, the supplies, and insurance are discussion in the prepaid expenses or under prepayments. na the initial recognition of these accounts are really assets, and then when they are already expired or they are used, they become expense account. Then depreciation expense, this is the one that I also discussed to you. In accumulated depreciation, that the accumulated is the sum of the depreciation charges for those depreciable assets. Kadumdum pa kung ano itong depreciable assets, the assets like land improvements, building, machineries, equipment, furnitures and fixtures, tools, etc. Basta every uh, those property and equipment assets, no? Except of course land, no? Ang land of course is not depreciable, or its value will not reduce over the time of usage, but instead it will appreciate. Mas muda ko hinuan ang ija value, or magka-increase ija value sa magka-appreciate siya, or diya siya i-classify as depreciable assets. Next, you have the interest on collectible accounts expense. So if you have an accounts receivable account, atong mga utang ng mga customers, na waya na kabayari, yan na makolekta, yan na ikita si customer, then you can charge the account, the balance of that receivable to uncollectible accounts expense. Interest expense, aton again prepaid interest, no? Again under prepayments discussion, that whatever, no, interest, for example, collected in advance, then prepaid interest. But if, for example, daily prepaid, you paid it on a monthly basis regularly, then the account should be interest expense. So this is the expense attached to an obligation. Kung siya mo utang, then of course, siya attached na bayron na interest if it is a interest-bearing loan or credit. Then repairs and maintenance. So of course, kung magpa-repair ka ng mga sakyanan, mga machineries, equipment are charged to repairs and maintenance. Then taxes and licenses. These are the taxes that you pay to the Bureau of Internal Revenue, but of course not those that are charged to like the income tax. Income taxes are not classified as taxes and licenses, but taxes and licenses are for the taxes that you paid for BIR, some only items, not all. Taxes that you paid for your driver's license, no? Taxes that you paid for the mayor's permit or the municipal permit. Taxes that you paid for mga royalties for any government that you use, or facility of the government that you use or you have rented is also classified as taxes and licenses. SSS ang PhilHealth and Pag-ibig contributions na nato, di ba, remember kung bayaran si Ja and the kung liability si Ja, then liability accounts, but on the part of the employer atong tagdidak sa employee dili pwede si Ja ma-expense, only the employer share could be charged to expense. Professional fees, like for example, kung ako, CPA ako, tapos nagbayaran ako for my services, kung dili na ako si dyan negosyo, then professional fees ra. But then if it is my business, then it becomes my income. Amortization expense, aton remember, aton pagbayad ng, aton if the tangible assets, you have franchise agreement, tapos i-amortize mo over the life of the franchise. Trainings, of course, kung ma-join trainings sa seminar at tinan ng mga empleyado o ni boss, then that is trainings and seminars. So, of course, it includes all mga registration fees, mga mga board and lodging, no, as seminars and trainings. Travel and transportation, aton mga PT per dime of this are when you attend an official function for the business, or it's either a training or seminar o tagsugo ka, then all incidental costs are charged to travel and transportation. Research and development expense, if you want to develop a product, then the expense that you're going to incur for the trial process, then they are charged to research and development expense. Even in education class, we can always charge the research and development that the flare, when we started with flare, the trial and errors of flare is charged to research and development expense. Advertising and promotion is a counter for expenses incurred, of course, when you advertise your product. No? And then charitable, the advertising and promotion does not limit to pag-advertise sa radio or sa television or sa print. No, it is not limited to pwede ra kung mag-promote ka mga free taste is also an example of promotion or advertising. Or sponsorship, no? For example, under advertising and promotion, diyan may sponsorship, no, sa isa ka event, then that can also be classified as advertising and promotion. Charitable contributions, the one you donate to any charitable institutions or any person, no, or a community where you conducted your, for example, there was a solicitation made by a NGO or a local government unit, then it is a charitable contributions. And all those expenses that cannot be classified with the one that we mentioned here under expenses can be recorded as miscellaneous expense. That's it for the expense accounts. I will stop my discussion here, not under expenses. It was already a lengthy discussion, and if I'm going to continue with another topic for lesson 2, for the module 2, maybe you will be having difficulty in understanding everything. Especially now, for the next topic, we will be dealing about the debit, credit, or the financial transaction worksheet. Thank you, class. You may ask questions after the video presentation. Thank you for listening.